The laughter stabbed deeper than knives. I sat at the long dinner table, my parents' voices bouncing off the crystal glasses and silver plates. My mother leaned back, smirking. Maybe if you prayed less and worked more, you wouldn't still be asking for help. Everyone laughed, my cousins, my brother, even my father. I forced a smile, staring at my untouched food. Inside, my heart twisted, but my lips moved in silence. Lord, you said I won't have to fight this battle. Help me stand still. No one heard my prayer. My name is Ilara Wynne. To my family, I was their failure. The one who chose morals over money, kindness over cunning. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and if you've ever been the odd and ridiculed one in your family for choosing right standing over evil, tell me how you overcame that, and where you're watching from in the comment section. My job was gone, my rent overdue, and my faith the only thing left unshaken. My mother's voice sliced again. You're too soft, Ilara. The world eats people like you. I blinked slowly, as if sealing my heart behind glass. Maybe, I said softly, but God still feeds me. Laughter erupted again. But for the first time I didn't flinch. Under the table, my fingers wrapped around my grandmother's silver cross, warm from my touch. That small pendant had outlived storms, tears, and broken promises. Tonight, it reminded me, the battle wasn't mine. Later that night, as the dishes clattered in the sink behind me, I whispered to myself, one day, Lord, I'll see the deliverance you promised. The night was quiet, except for the echo. From my room, I could still hear my father's voice from the kitchen. She'll never make it. She's too righteous for this world. That word, righteous, dripped like poison. My chest tightened, not from the insult itself, but from how easily it rolled off his tongue. He wasn't angry, he was sure. I pressed my face into my pillow, eyes burning. I remembered being 10 years old, clutching my allowance to tithe at church, only to be mocked. My father had laughed then too. You really think heaven keeps score? But I never gave to earn points. I gave because I believed goodness multiplied. Even if no one else believed in me, I believed in that. In the dim light, my silver cross gleamed faintly on my desk. I reached for it, holding it like a secret key. Lord, I whispered, if they can't see me, help me see myself through your eyes. Somewhere deep in my chest, the echo changed. It was no longer their voice, it was his. Take up your position, Ilara. Stand firm. And though my world was crumbling, a strange calm filled my room. It was the peace of someone who'd just realized. My worth didn't need their approval. Morning came with cold air and unpaid bills. I sat by the window with my tea gone cold, staring at the stack of envelopes, reminders of my lost job. I had refused to falsify a financial report at my old firm. My boss called me naive. My parents called me dramatic. But I called it obedience. When I told my parents I'd been fired, my mother's voice was sharp as glass. See, honesty doesn't pay bills. I looked away. Maybe not yours, I said softly, but one day it will pay mine. That night, I wrapped myself in a thin blanket and whispered my verse again. You will not have to fight this battle. My voice trembled, but my faith didn't. The cross pendant pressed cool against my skin. My last inheritance, my only luxury. I kissed it gently before sleep took me. And in my dreams, I saw myself walking through a long corridor filled with light. Voices whispered all around, not of mockery but of promise. Stand firm, see the deliverance. I woke with tears on my cheeks and something new burning in my heart. Not pain but purpose. If the world wouldn't hire me, I would hire myself. Winter hit like punishment. I wore the same coat every day, the same shoes with worn-out soles. I worked odd jobs, cleaning offices, waiting tables, doing freelance design work from borrowed Wi-Fi. My parents stopped calling. My friends disappeared. But every morning, I still whispered my verse into the mirror. You will not have to fight this battle. My reflection looked tired but strong. Each whisper became a seed in my chest, buried deep, waiting for spring. One day, while serving coffee in a diner, I noticed a shivering man outside. I took my lunch break, walked out, and handed him my half sandwich. "God bless you," I said. An older man at the next table, quiet, watchful, saw the whole thing. His name was Mr. Alden. And though I didn't know it yet, my battle was already being fought. Not by me, but for me. Mr. Alden returned to the diner the next day. And the next. He always sat in the same booth, watching me with kind eyes. "Do you always give away your lunch?" he asked one afternoon. Smiled. "Only when someone's hungrier than me." He chuckled softly. "That's a dangerous way to live." Shrugged. "It's the only way I know." Over time we spoke more. He told me he once owned a business empire, but sold it to live quietly. He said he admired my honesty, my faith, my refusal to bend. "God gives seed to sowers," he told me once. "You've been faithful with little. He'll trust you with more." I didn't understand then. I just smiled and thanked him. One snowy evening, as I closed up the diner, he left me a note under his tip. "Keep standing firm. Deliverance has a schedule." I held the note close to my heart, feeling warmth bloom inside my coat. Somewhere above the winter sky, I knew heaven was already turning my story. The days grew colder, but my faith burned brighter. I walked to work each morning with my coat buttoned high and my grandmother's cross warm against my skin. I whispered my verse like armor. "You will not have to fight this battle." People saw me as fragile, a woman hanging on by faith alone. But inside I was steel. Each morning I passed the same frost-covered bench where I had met the homeless man. I always left a small paper bag there. Coffee, bread, sometimes soup. No one ever saw me do it. I didn't need them to. Mr. Alden started joining me on my walks after work. He listened as I talked about my ideas for design. Honest pay, beautiful homes, fair trade materials. "You think too purely for business," he teased one evening. Smiled. "Then maybe I'll build a different kind of business." He nodded slowly, like a man hearing a melody from long ago. Ilara, when God sees someone who won't sell their soul, he starts making room for them. "Don't stop." The snow swirled around us like a soft promise. And in that moment I felt it, the stillness before something holy. The following spring brought new life and new hope. Mr. Alden helped me design my first logo. Win Interiors. It wasn't fancy, but it was honest. I worked from my small apartment, balancing invoices on the same table where I prayed each night. My clients were few. One kind teacher, a small bakery owner, a widow who wanted her late husband's workshop turned into a reading room. Every job I took I treated like gold. My parents still didn't believe in me. When my mother called one afternoon, she asked coldly, "You're still playing with color palettes?" I smiled softly. "Yes, and people pay me for it." She scoffed and hung up. I didn't cry this time. Prayed. "Lord, you see what they don't. I'll keep standing firm." That weekend, I received my biggest call yet. A small hotel wanted me to redesign their lobby. It wasn't millions, but it was purpose. I clutched my cross and whispered, "This is your battle, Lord. I'll take up my position." And for the first time in a long while I laughed. Not from joy alone, but from peace. My business grew slowly but honestly. Every project came from word of mouth. Every client left with warmth in their eyes. Mr. Alden became more like family. He would visit my studio every Friday, bringing coffee and quiet advice. "Integrity is a seed," he said once. "You water it with patience." Smiled. Then I must have a garden by now. But even with success blooming, loneliness lingered. At night, I would sometimes stare out my window at the city lights, whispering my verse to the glass. "You will not have to fight this battle." I missed my family, the closeness that had never really been close. Still I couldn't go back. Not yet. One day Mr. Alden gave me a gift, a small wooden box. Inside was a simple gold chain shaped like a cross. "It belonged to someone who taught me faith," he said. "Now it's yours." I blinked back tears. "Why me?" He smiled. Because you're fighting the right battles, by not fighting at all. Years passed, and Wynn Interiors blossomed into something beautiful. It wasn't a giant firm, but it was honest, trusted, respected. I was no longer the girl mocked for my morals. I was a woman defined by them. I hired fairly, paid well, prayed over my work, and kept my heart unspoiled. But every success seemed to make my parents more distant. When I invited them to my award ceremony, the Rising Entrepreneur of the Year, they didn't come. Instead, I received a message from my mother. "We don't do church shows." On stage that night, holding my award, I smiled through tears. I didn't thank my parents. Thanked God. And I quoted the verse I now lived by. "You will not have to fight this battle. Take up your positions, stand firm." The audience fell silent. Some even wept. My story was no longer hidden, it was light. Somewhere in the crowd, a reporter took note of my name. And that note would later become the first line of the story that changed everything. It happened on an ordinary day. Mr. Alden didn't show up for coffee. Called him, no answer. Worried, I went to his apartment and found the door slightly open. Inside, everything was calm. Too calm. On the table lay a note with my name. My hands shook as I read it. "Ilara, if you're reading this, it means my time has come. Don't mourn too long. My battles are finished, and yours are about to turn." Tears fell silently as I sat beside his empty chair. In the corner, I noticed the wooden box, the one that once held the ring. Inside it now was a folded paper. It read, "Check with my lawyer. You'll understand soon." That night I didn't sleep. I prayed through the darkness, clutching my cross so tightly my palms ached. "Lord, is this part of the deliverance you promised?" Somewhere deep in my spirit, the same still voice replied, "Take up your position, Ilara. Stand firm." The next morning, I walked to the lawyer's office with trembling steps. He greeted me with a solemn look, sliding a sealed envelope across the desk. "Mr. Alden left this for you," he said quietly. I opened it, and inside was a map, hand-drawn, marked with symbols I didn't recognize. At the bottom, in his familiar handwriting, "This is the path. Follow it, and you'll find what I could not." My heart pounded. Was this a treasure, a warning, or a calling? The lawyer leaned forward. "He believed you were chosen for something greater. He said you'd know when the time came." I folded the map carefully, feeling its weight like destiny itself. The world outside seemed unchanged, but within me, everything had shifted. I stood in my small office, staring at the check in my hand. It was from a new client, Lucan Greystone, a real estate developer with too smooth charm and promises too big to trust. "You have potential," he told me during our first meeting. "I can take your business global." His voice was rich, his smile magnetic. For a moment, I felt like my dreams were unfolding before me. But as I read the contract again, something itched in my spirit. Buried deep in the fine print was a clause that would give him full rights to my designs. I set the papers down slowly. "Mr. Greystone," I said, "I think you've mistaken me for someone desperate." He leaned forward, amused. "You'll regret saying no." I smiled gently. "Maybe. But I'd regret losing my soul more." That night I went home exhausted but proud. I opened my Bible and read my verse again. "You will not have to fight this battle. Take up your positions, stand firm." 2 Chronicles 20 verse 17. The next morning I found an anonymous note slid under my office door. "Proud choices don't pay rent." My stomach tightened, but my faith didn't move. A week later, my old boss, the one who fired me years ago, appeared at my new office. He smiled thinly. "You've done well for yourself. I need your help with a report." I almost laughed at the irony. The same man who once said I was too honest for business was now asking me to fix his company's image. "I'm not sure I'm your type of consultant," I said quietly. He leaned closer. "This could be worth 6 figures. You'll just need to make a few numbers look cleaner." My heart sank. It was the same trap in new clothes. I shook my head. You haven't changed. But I have. When he left, angry and humiliated, I sat alone at my desk. For a moment doubt whispered, maybe you should have taken it. No one would know. I pressed my cross to my lips and whispered, you will not have to fight this battle, Lord. Fight this greed in me. Outside, thunder rumbled like a divine warning. Inside, my peace held steady. Later that night my phone buzzed, a message from Mr. Alden. I'm proud of you. Some storms are sent just to test the roof. I didn't know that Mr. Alden was quietly watching me. He had connections I could never imagine. Old partners, investors, even journalists. To him I wasn't just a friend. I was proof that goodness could still win. One afternoon he called me to lunch. I have a question, he said, sipping his tea. If God doubled your business tomorrow, would you still treat people the same? Smiled. If he doubled it, I'd just double the kindness. He chuckled softly. You're rare, Ilara Wynne. Don't lose that. As we left the cafe, a stranger stopped us, a woman in tears. Are you Ilara Wynne? You redesigned the shelter downtown. My son sleeps there now. Thank you. Blinked stunned. Mr. Alden just smiled quietly, eyes glistening. Deliverance doesn't always come as money, my dear. Sometimes it comes as meaning. That night I looked out my window again. I whispered into the dark, Lord, I see you working. Even when I can't see how. The wind outside carried a stillness I'd learned to recognize. A promise moving unseen. The success continued, but so did the tests. A woman named Kira joined my firm as a new assistant. She was clever, bright, ambitious, but hungry for the spotlight. First I admired her. Until small things began to vanish. Client lists, concept drafts, login passwords. Then one day Kira was gone, and so was my biggest design proposal. A week later I saw it on social media. The exact design under Kira's new brand. My hands trembled as I scrolled. Every color, every curve, every word was mine. My friends urged me to sue. My staff cried injustice. But I just stood still, heart heavy but steady. This battle isn't mine, I said softly. God fights what I can't reach. 2 weeks later, Kira's company collapsed after a plagiarism scandal exposed her theft. Not by me, but through a viral post from a designer in another city. When I saw the news, I felt no victory. Only peace. I closed my eyes and whispered, deliverance looks different every time. Months passed. The storm calmed. My firm grew stronger, and my name became known. Not for speed, but for sincerity. My parents, however, were struggling. My father's business faced audits, and my mother began calling again, pretending concern. You're doing well, I hear, she said sweetly one evening. Maybe you could help us with some paperwork. Pause. I'm sorry you're having trouble, Mom. Trouble? Her tone sharpened. It's nothing I can't fix. I just thought family helps family. Decide. Family also respects family. After the call, I sat by my window. I didn't wish them harm. I didn't wish them anything but truth. The next day, Mr. Alden invited me to a charity gala. I want the world to see the woman who kept her soul clean, he said with pride. I laughed softly. You make me sound like a miracle. He smiled. You are one. But behind his smile, his eyes were tired, a quiet foreshadowing that the season was about to turn. The trouble began with a post. Someone online claimed that Wynne Interiors had stolen donations meant for a shelter project. The post spread like wildfire. Within hours, my phone filled with angry messages. Fraud. Hypocrite. Fake Christian. My stomach twisted. I knew the project. Every receipt, every dollar, every nail. But rumors move faster than truth. My assistant cried. Should we call a lawyer? I stared at the glowing screen and whispered my verse. You will not have to fight this battle. Take up your positions, stand firm. I took a slow breath. No lawyer yet. Let's just be still. The next day, 3 clients froze their contracts. News blogs printed my name with question marks. And worst of all, my parents called. My father's voice dripped cold. I told you the world would eat you. Now look. I almost hung up, but didn't. Maybe the world bites, I said quietly. But I'm not the meal. That night I sat at my desk, tears running silently. I picked up my Bible, and it slipped from my hand, falling to the floor. I knelt to pick it up, trembling. Lord, I whispered, I'll stand still, but please don't be silent. By morning, I decided to face the storm head-on. I sent one short message to my followers. The truth doesn't need a fight, it just needs light. Meet me at my office at noon. Cameras came. So did critics. Reporters filled my small lobby, whispering, waiting for tears. I stepped forward in a simple dress, no jewelry, not even my cross. My voice was calm but clear. I built my company on honesty. Every project, every penny, is open to anyone who asks. I placed a folder on the table. Inside were bank records, invoices, donation receipts, all neat and unshaken. People may lie about me, I said, but God won't let lies last. Then I opened my worn Bible to the verse I knew by heart. You will not have to fight this battle. Take up your positions. Stand firm and see the deliverance the Lord will give you. Silence spread. Then murmurs. Then cameras clicked. Just as I finished, I heard a thud behind me. Mr. Alden had collapsed. Call an ambulance, someone shouted. I dropped to my knees beside him. His hand found mine weakly. Stand firm, he whispered before the medics lifted him away. The rumor was forgotten that same evening when a whistleblower released screenshots proving another firm had framed me. Truth had fought for me, even while I prayed. Hospital corridors smell like fear and disinfectant. I sat outside Mr. Alden's room, praying with shaking hands. Machines beeped softly behind the door. When the doctor finally came out, he spoke gently. He's stable for now, but his heart is weak. I nodded, eyes heavy. Can I see him? Inside, Mr. Alden looked smaller than I remembered. But his eyes, still warm, still knowing, found mine. You did well, Ilara, he whispered. You let God prove himself. I sat beside him. You've been my rock. Don't leave me now. He smiled faintly. I'm not leaving. I'm just going home early. He reached for my hand. Keep sewing. The field is bigger than you think. Tears blurred my sight. Rest now, please. As I prayed quietly, the monitor's rhythm slowed, then steadied again, a fragile truce between heaven and earth. Outside the window, dawn broke through gray clouds. I felt it, that same stillness that always came before a miracle. For several weeks, I visited the hospital daily. I read to Mr. Alden, prayed, and handled his mail. He never spoke much, but every time I left he'd whisper, "Stand firm." Then one morning his bed was empty. The nurse met me in the hall, holding an envelope. He asked me to give you this. Inside was a short letter in his careful handwriting. My dearest Ilara, the Lord has let me see deliverance before my final rest, you. Whatever comes next, know that goodness always finds its witness. Yours in faith, eh? I folded the paper, pressing it against my heart. I didn't cry loudly, only breathed a single prayer. Thank you, Lord, for lending him to me. At his funeral, people spoke of his wisdom, his empire, his philanthropy. But I spoke of his stillness, the quiet way he believed. As the casket lowered, I whispered, "You will not have to fight this battle." 2 weeks later, I was sitting at my office when the call came. It was from a law firm downtown. "Miss Wynne," the voice said, "we need you present for the reading of Mr. Alden's will." My chest tightened. Almost said no. But something in my spirit said go. At the long mahogany table, unfamiliar faces stared as the lawyer opened a thick folder. Mr. Alden had left letters to charities, staff and friends, and then my name. To Ilara Wynne, the lawyer read, "The woman who taught me that faith is still the best business. I leave the remainder of my estate." The room gasped. I sat frozen. "How much is the remainder?" someone asked. The lawyer's eyes softened. $400 million. The sound left the room. My hands trembled as tears spilled silently down my cheeks. I didn't speak, didn't shout, only whispered, "You fought the battle for me, Lord." Outside the window, the sky was the color of sunrise, gold on silver. The words still echoed in my ears. $400 million. I sat frozen at that long mahogany table, my hands trembling as the lawyer's voice faded into the silence. The room had gasped, but I hadn't. Couldn't. My tears spilled quietly, not from greed or triumph, but from awe. Mr. Alden had fought battles I never saw, and now his victory had been placed in my hands. I whispered under my breath, "You fought the battle for me, Lord." Outside the window, the sky was painted in sunrise, gold on silver. Felt like heaven itself was nodding. The moment I walked out of the law firm, the world felt heavier than it had a few hours earlier. $400 million was not a gift you carried with ease. It felt like someone had placed a mountain in my hands and asked me to walk without shaking. I kept hearing Alden's voice in my mind, calm and steady, saying, "Stand firm." But even his words couldn't silence the fear crawling up my spine. When I reached my office, the room looked different, as if the news had changed the air itself. I set my bag down and reached for the small cross chain on my desk. It slipped from my fingers, hit the wood and broke. The sound was sharp like a warning. I knelt and picked it up, staring at the snapped links. The sunlight coming through the window made them shine like tiny fire sparks. "You gave me this, Mr. Alden," I whispered. "And God, you've given me more than I can carry. Please help me stay steady." The next few days rushed by like wind. My phone rang non-stop. Messages poured in. People I had not seen or spoken to in years suddenly remembered my number. Reporters waited on the sidewalk with cameras pointed at my windows. Even my parents called, their voices coated with fake sweetness, as if I couldn't hear the hunger behind their words. "You are blessed now," my mother said one evening, her tone smooth but sharp. "Blessings should be shared." I closed my eyes and breathed slowly. "Blessings should be handled well," I said. "Not thrown around." She clicked her tongue. "Handled well. That sounds like greed in a nice dress." I didn't argue. There was no point. People hear what their hearts want. Each night, I stayed awake praying longer than usual. I kept thinking about how money could twist a person's heart without them noticing. I didn't want mine to bend or break. I had worked too hard to build a clean life. I didn't want money, especially money I didn't earn, to pull me away from what mattered. One afternoon, I walked into my office and saw the broken cross chain on my desk again, catching the light like it was calling to me. I picked it up and held it high. A verse of the Bible rose in my mind like a whisper from heaven. "You will not have to fight this battle." And in that moment something settled inside me. Quiet but strong. The inheritance was not just money. It was a task, challenge, a calling placed in my hands by a man who believed in me, and a God who saw beyond my fears. The next morning, the sunrise painted the sky in soft gold. I stood by my window and felt a strange peace wash over me. The stormy season was done. A new one had begun, a season for planting, not fighting. Still, I knew things would not be simple. Large gifts attract large shadows. And soon those shadows appeared. On the third day after the will reading, I received a letter with no name on it. The envelope was cream-colored, the handwriting neat but cold. When I opened it, a single sentence stared back at me. "Money reveals who you are or who you fear." There was no signature, no hint, just that quiet threat folded into paper. I read it twice and felt my heartbeat quicken. Someone was watching. Someone who did not believe my hands were steady enough to carry this wealth. Someone who might want it for themselves. I set the letter down and folded my hands. "Lord," I whispered, "this is a path you gave me. Help me walk it without fear." That night, I placed the broken cross in a small wooden box and slid it into my desk drawer. It was no longer just a symbol of faith. It was a reminder that even things that break still shine, and battles that seem heavy are not mine to fight alone. With that thought in my heart, I stepped into the new season, not strong but willing. And sometimes willingness is the beginning of courage. The first weeks after the will reading felt like walking through a wide, open field I had never seen before. Everything looked bright and full of promise, yet every step felt uncertain. $400 million was not just wealth. It was ground waiting for seed. And I kept hearing Alden's words from his hospital bed. Keep sowing. The field is bigger than you think. So I started planting. The downtown shelter was the first place I visited. The halls were crowded with tired faces, worn coats, and small children sitting close to their mothers for warmth. The director stared at the check I handed her. Her hands shook. Tears filled her eyes. "Who should we thank for this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Thank God," I said. "I'm only passing the gift along." But something strange happened as I turned to leave. A man near the door called out, "Funny how money changes people." His voice was low, but I heard it clearly. When I looked back, he melted into the crowd. I walked out with the feeling that someone had just tested my heart. Still I didn't stop. Kept giving. Scholarships for young designers. New classrooms for children living in harsh places. Quiet gifts to families drowning in debt. The more I sowed, the more ideas came. But every time I appeared in public, I felt eyes following me. Not grateful ones but sharp ones watching closely, as if waiting for me to slip. I decided to give anonymously as much as possible. When my name didn't appear, the work felt cleaner, like the soil was softer. Still, the world noticed. News sites posted stories about hidden donors and the mystery behind sudden help. Some guessed it was me. Others argued it was another billionaire using me as cover. I ignored all of it and focused on the work. One afternoon, I sat in my office surrounded by design sketches. My assistant, Naya, walked in with a stack of letters. She looked troubled. "These came today," she said. "All from different cities. But, look at the handwriting." I opened the first envelope. A single sentence was written inside. "Money reveals who you fear." The same handwriting as the first letter. Another envelope held the words, "Your seeds will not hide your mistakes." I felt a chill crawl across my skin. Someone was tracking my giving. Someone wanted me to second-guess my steps. Naya bit her lip. "Do you want me to call the police?" "No," I said quietly. "This is not a crime. It is a warning. But not one that decides my steps." I placed the letters in a folder and locked it in my desk. But deep inside, the unease stayed. That night, I dreamed of a house glowing with soft light, a quiet place with open doors and steady air. When I woke, the dream still sat in my heart like a warm stone. Sanctuary. House of silence. Place where people could breathe again. I spent days sketching it. Every wall, every window, every corner filled with peace. When I finished, I named it the House of Stillness. A place where anyone, no matter how broken, could sit and feel God's peace settle over their shoulders like a soft blanket. When I presented the design to the board of Alden's estate, the room fell silent. Then one woman whispered, "This is more than a building. This is healing." They approved it faster than any project I had ever submitted. Construction crews arrived within weeks. I visited often, watching workers move with calm steps, as if they sensed the building was special. But twice, I noticed a man standing near the fence, wearing a dark coat, watching the site. When I walked closer, he slipped away before I could reach him. The same chill from the letters returned. Still, I refused to let fear take root. If Alden trusted me with this inheritance, then I had to trust God with the battle. My job was to sow. His job was to guard the field. One evening, as the sun dropped behind the unfinished walls of the House of Stillness, I whispered, "Lord, if there is a shadow in this story, show me how to stand firm." The wind moved gently, as if promising an answer. Little did I know that the shadows watching me were closer than I thought, and they would soon step into the light. The House of Stillness opened on a soft morning, with sunlight spreading across the stone walls like warm paint. People came slowly at first, A mother holding her crying child, an old man walking with a cane, a young woman clutching a small Bible. By noon the sanctuary was full. Some sat in silence. Some prayed with shaking hands. Others simply breathed, letting peace settle like dust in the air. As I stood near the entrance, watching strangers find rest, my heart felt full for the first time in months. This was what Alden meant. This was the reason behind the inheritance. Not luxury, not fame, healing. But as I turned to greet a group of visitors, I froze. My parents were walking down the stone path toward the sanctuary. My mother's steps were slow, like someone walking on unsure ground. My father's shoulders, usually stiff with pride, seemed lower, almost tired. They stopped a few feet in front of me. "Ilara," my mother said softly. "We came to see what you built." Her voice trembled, and for a moment, the sharpness she always carried was gone. He nodded. "Come inside." We walked through the hall together. They moved from space to space without speaking, touching the stone walls, reading the verses carved into them, listening to the gentle sound of the fountain in the center garden. My father stood the longest near the scripture by the entrance, tracing each carved word slowly with his finger. My mother wiped her eyes. "Look at this place, built by our daughter." Her voice was real, yet hesitant but honest. Dad said nothing. I felt something break inside me. Not pain, I only prayed for peace. My mother reached for my hand, squeezed it gently. For the first time in my life, I felt a sense of belonging with family. We sat together in the prayer hall for a while. It was the closest we had been in years. They left that evening unsure of what to say to me, though I could feel they had so much to say. Over the next few weeks, the house of stillness filled every day. People traveled from towns far away just to sit in silence. Some left notes of thanks on the benches. Others left stories of healing and hope. Even my parents returned more than once, each visit softer than the last. But shadows still lingered. During the third week after the opening, Naya rushed into my office, her face pale. "There's someone asking for you," she said. "He refuses to give his name." My stomach tightened. "Where is he?" "In the garden. Near the fountain." When I stepped outside, I saw him, the same man who had stood near the construction site. He wore a dark coat even though the day was warm. His eyes were sharp, tired, and strangely familiar. "You've been watching me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded. "Yes." "Why?" He took a slow breath. "Because I knew Alden. Better than you think." My heart skipped. "Who are you?" He looked down at his hands. "My name is Jonah Clark. Alden was my uncle." The world tilted a little. "Uncle." "He never told me he had close family." "He didn't," Jonah said. "Because he didn't trust many of us. Most wanted his money. I didn't. I only wanted answers." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small notebook. "When he died, he left this for me. And inside it, your name." I took the notebook with shaking hands. On the first page, Alden's handwriting filled the lines. "If Jonah comes, help him find the peace he lost." Jonah watched my face. "I sent you the letters. Not to scare you. To see if you would break under pressure. Most people would. You did not." Anger and relief twisted inside me. "You should have spoken to me. Not stalked me." "I know," he said quietly. "But I needed to be sure Alden chose well." For a moment we stood in silence. Then he whispered, "I don't want the inheritance. I don't want your work. I only want a place to start again. My life fell apart years ago. Alden tried to help, but I pushed him away. Now he's gone, and I don't know how to fix anything." I looked toward the sanctuary. The house of stillness stood strong, glowing in the late afternoon sun. "You don't need money to begin again," I said. "You just need a place to breathe." Jonah's eyes softened. "Will this place allow someone like me?" "Yes," I said. "It was built for people just like you." For the first time he smiled, a small, tired smile but real. As he walked inside, I whispered, Alden, I hope you're watching. The sanctuary held two kinds of visitors now, those seeking peace and those bringing hidden shadows. And I knew this story was far from over. Years passed, and the seeds I had planted, quiet seeds of work, prayer, and obedience, began to grow in ways I never expected. Nothing happened fast. Nothing arrived in one big miracle. Instead, everything came little by little, like soft rain that doesn't look powerful until you realize the whole ground has changed. My name began to appear in places I had never dreamed of. People I didn't know reached out for guidance. My story spread far beyond my town, then beyond my state, then even farther. I did not chase influence. It simply rose around me like a gentle tide. Yet with every new step upward, the weight on my shoulders became heavier. Success came, but so did misunderstanding. People created stories about me that I had never lived. Some said I had become proud. Some said the blessing Mr. Alden left me made me forget where I came from. They whispered, judged, and assumed. First, I tried to explain myself. I wanted everyone to understand that I was only trying to walk in the purpose God had placed in my hands. But no matter how much I explained, the misunderstandings grew. The pressure began to follow me into places that were once peaceful. Even small things became heavy. Some days I didn't know whether to speak or stay silent. Some days I felt watched, weighed, and questioned by people who didn't even know my heart. But all of this pushed me into a place I didn't expect, a deeper reliance on God. I learned to stop running to people for clarity. I learned to kneel before God instead of arguing with strangers. There were nights when I sat on the floor of my room, hands shaking, whispering, "Lord, this is too much." And in those moments of weakness, I felt Him speak to my heart in a small, gentle voice. God's words carried me. Yet even with all the tension and all the pressure, the house of stillness, the place I built from the gift, began to flourish. People came broken, tired, and lost, and left renewed. Some sat silently for hours. Some cried. Some prayed. Some just walked through and breathed deeply, as if peace itself lived in the air. Later that evening, as the last rays of sunlight slipped through the windows, I sat alone in the hall. The quiet wrapped around me like a warm blanket. And I realized something I had never understood before. Deliverance is not always loud. Sometimes it is slow. Sometimes it is painful. Sometimes it looks like growth you never asked for. The world saw my victories, but they did not see the tears that watered those victories. They did not see the battles fought in silence. They did not see the nights I questioned everything. But God saw. And in His own patient way, He taught me that deliverance wasn't just about battles ending. It was about hearts becoming stronger. This was the truth I carried as I stepped out of the hall that night. Weakness is not failure. Weakness, in the hands of God, can still witness. The days after Jonah's arrival blurred into a quiet rhythm. The house of stillness thrived, not through fanfare or announcements, but through the simple, steady work of healing hearts. Children laughed in the gardens, parents sat in prayerful silence, and strangers left with lighter steps and softer eyes. Every corner of the sanctuary seemed to hum with the echoes of peace. Yet one piece of the puzzle still weighed on me: my parents. They had rejected me, mocked my faith, and walked away when I needed them most. Their visits weeks earlier had been hesitant, filled with awe and guilt, but not reconciliation. I had prayed for years, and I knew forgiveness could be given, but healing required honesty. One evening, as the sun painted gold across the sanctuary's stone walls, my mother appeared at the garden gate alone. Her hand shook slightly as she held the small Bible she had once ridiculed. My father followed a few steps behind. His usual stern posture softened. They stopped a few feet away, unsure whether to approach. "Ilara," my mother said quietly, we have been blind. We have said things that cut you deeper than we knew. But we see now what Mr. Alden saw in you. Your heart, your faith, your courage." I studied her face. The lines of regret and sorrow were real, not performance. I took a slow breath. "I prayed for this moment," I said gently. "Not for anger, not for bitterness, but for understanding. Tears glistened in her eyes. We want to make amends. To be part of your life if you'll allow it. He nodded. You are welcome. But it must start with honesty, not words spoken lightly. They walked with me through the sanctuary. My father touched the scripture etched near the entrance. You will not have to fight this battle. Take up your positions. Stand firm and see the deliverance the Lord will give you. His voice broke as he whispered. I mocked what I did not understand. Now I see. You stood firm, even when we could not. We sat together in the quiet garden, the fountains trickling gently around us. My mother opened her Bible and read aloud softly. Faith. It is not weakness. It is strength. Yes, I replied. Strength guided by patience, obedience, and love. That is what Mr. Alden believed in me enough to leave behind. He knew a gift is more than money. It is a responsibility. For the first time in years, my parents and I spoke freely. Their questions were honest, their apologies sincere. They shared memories of my childhood, their regrets for the harsh words, and their hopes to learn from me rather than control me. By the time the moon rose over the garden, walls had softened and hearts had opened. After they left, I walked alone through the house of stillness. The flickering light from the sanctuary cast soft shadows across the benches. I held the restored cross chain in my hand, its links shining in the evening glow. This chain had witnessed my brokenness, my struggles, and my faithfulness. Now it reflected the wholeness that came from walking faithfully through storms. I knelt by the fountain, listening to the water trickle like whispers of encouragement. Thank you, Lord, I whispered. For Mr. Alden's gift. For the strength to stand firm. For showing me that even those who reject us can come back changed. Thank you for the harvest that grows quietly, unseen, and yet deeply. The wind brushed past me, carrying the faint sound of laughter and soft prayers from inside. I realized the true inheritance was not just the wealth or the buildings, but the lives touched, the hearts healed, and the purpose fulfilled. I rose and walked through the garden one last time that night, taking in the soft gold of lanterns and the scent of the flowering trees. The house of stillness was alive, not with grandeur, but with quiet witness. Every person who found solace here was a living echo of Mr. Alden's vision and my faithfulness to it. And in that stillness I understood fully. Deliverance had come, not only for me but for those I loved, for those I served, and even for those who once had turned away. I whispered, the battles were never mine. They were yours, Lord. And you fought them all. Above the house of stillness, stars glimmered gold on silver, and the world felt right. The harvest was complete. Peace had come.